outside of Rabbi Groner, I think it only appropriate to mention and to acknowledge Rabbi Groner, who, as we all know, as great as Rabbi Groner was, and he was great, and as a giant of a man that he was, the gentle demeanor that he had clearly came from his dear Rebbitzin. They had absolute love and devotion and care for every member of this community. And on behalf of all of us, we wish the extended Groner family much nechama, much comfort for birth of their parents, grandparents, Rebbitzin Groner and Rabbi Groner. And we know that Rebbitzin Groner and Rabbi Groner together are good to best with Medis Yesha for our entire community, that we should be able to rebuild and be strong, and the legacy that Rebbitzin Groner and Rabbi Groner leave with us should be strong of a strong, loving, caring community. Please give me the honor to invite Rabbi Marcus Somlin, QC from Perth, whichever he is. There you go. Marcus Somlin.
Thank you, Roger. And can I, first of all, extend my thanks to the Groner family for the opportunity and the honour of saying a few words about Rabbi Groner. And can I also, by way of introductory remark, observe that it is somewhat intimidating to be speaking in front of rabbis who are far more learned than I am and ever will be. And so you'll forgive me for, no doubt, the errors that will creep into the things that I say. Many eloquent and learned things have been said, no doubt, about Rabbi Groner over the last 10 years. My observations, therefore, are necessarily personal ones. But I am hopeful that in the personal observations that I make, one will be able to distill some general things about the greatness of Rabbi Groner and, of course, of his recently passed Rebbitzin. My personal journey with Rabbi Groner began obviously in Perth, from where I came. Perth, interestingly, is described in rabbinic literature. There is a tshuva of the Chaim Ozer, which described from the, I think it was either the late 19th or early 20th century, which describes Perth as K'tzei Eretz HaGoyel, the end of the diaspora. And so that is from where I hail. Perth Jewish community in the late 1950s and late 1960s wanted to create a Jewish day school, which today, thankfully, is a thriving Jewish day school in a thriving community. But there was one rabbi outside of Perth who was passionate about helping this small and distant Jewish community to create a Jewish day school. And that was Rabbi Groner. He was one of the early appeal speakers who was brought to Perth in those early days by my wife's parents and various others, including, I don't know if any of you knew the late Edward Pachman, who was Tony Aaron's brother, who lived in Perth, was married to my mother's cousin. It's all very close in Western Australia. And Rabbi Groner came across as one of the early appeal speakers a few times in order to inspire people about the importance of supporting both financially and through sending their children to a Jewish day school. And Rabbi Groner continued to come to Perth on various occasions, and as you would expect, had an enormous impact on the Jewish community. One of those occasions happened to coincide with my bar mitzvah. In 1976, I'm disclosing my age by saying that, but there's no shame in that. So Rabbi Groner was actually at my bar mitzvah party, which was an outdoor summer's night in Perth on a Motzei Shabbos, and I still have photos of Rabbi Groner amongst a crowd in Perth in the 1970s. And while he was there, he came and spoke to groups of youth. In fact, he ran a Shabbaton at the high school. He slept on a mattress on the floor in the staff room and conducted a Shabbaton. I wasn't at the Shabbaton, but during the week, in the days that he was there, we used to have every morning at shul, we used to go to shul in the morning at 6:30 and then have a short shiur with the rabbi or others in the community, and then go off, have breakfast and go off to school. And the rabbi asked Rabbi Groner to take this shiur, which ordinarily was on Chumash Rashi and was given routinely by the Jews College rabbi that had faithfully served the Perth Jewish community for many years. But I have to say that my understanding of Rashi at that time was that it was something to do with archaeology and Egyptology. Very little to do with understanding the narrative in the Chumash. And Rabbi Groner sat with a few of us. There were only 5 or 6 boys and probably a couple of girls. We would have been 13, 14 years old. And that was my first encounter with Rabbi Groner. It was just electric. It was an experience that was extraordinarily powerful in the way that suddenly this ancient text that we had been sort of gazing at for all our youth came alive with a vibrancy that we did not know was possible. As it happened on that visit, Rabbi Groner also met with my parents, Aleichem Shalom, and persuaded them that if they really wanted to secure their children's Jewish education, they needed to send us all to Melbourne to be looked after by him. And my parents were not the sort of typical Melbourne Jews that Rabbi Groner would have encountered. My parents were older Australian, very Australian. My father's family had been here since the early 1800s, and my mother's family from the 1880s. They were university educated, very Australian, and they immediately fell in love with Rabbi Groner, with his sheer authenticity, not just the strength of his character and his charisma, but I remember my father, Aleichem Shalom, who had again been brought up in the tradition of the great synagogue in Sydney, and he told me after he'd met with Rabbi Groner that all his life he had been taught about the discipline of Judaism, how Judaism brought discipline and understanding to a person's life. And he said his eyes had been opened to the fact that Judaism was not a discipline. It was a source of love and joy. And then soon after that, and my older brother David came to Melbourne and he saw the community and he met people like Zalman Aleichem Shalom. It really had an enormous impact on my parents' life. But I remember very clearly Rabbi Groner sitting on our couch in our Aussie lounge room in Perth in 1976, telling my parents that the only way to secure our future as Jewish, educated Jews was to send them to Melbourne. And so, insanely, my parents sent us to Melbourne as young high school students, and true to his word, Rabbi Groner looked after us. And I ate at Rabbi and Rebbetzin Groner's house every Friday night. And one of the things that immediately struck me about eating there was that it was fairly plain to me that Rabbi Groner was an enormously powerful individual in the Australian Jewish community and the dominant personality of the Australian Jewish community, and wherever you went, people spoke of Rabbi Groner as the dominant rabbinic personality in Australia. Around his table, by and large, there did not sit important and illustrious people. Around his Shabbos table sat people who needed somewhere to go and who were sat at Rabbi Groner's right-hand side and made to feel extremely special. And when you're 15, you don't quite appreciate how extraordinary that is, and indeed how extraordinary Rebbetzin Groner's unfailing, relentless pleasantness was. And it's only really as an adult that that greatness has penetrated into my consciousness, so that I can look back, and unfortunately I don't have the opportunity to tell them directly, but that is often the way, of the greatness and the humility that combined so beautifully around that Shabbos table. I wanted actually, for that reason, to mention what I think is an interesting piece of Gemara. I'm not going to learn Gemara with you, you'll be relieved to know, but there is a passage about a great rabbi who lived at the end of the 2nd century of the Common Era. He came at the period of the end of the Tanoim and the beginning of the Amoraim. He was a student and principal disciple of the Nasi, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the great Rabbi Judah the Prince who authored the Mishnah. And there's a passage in the Gemara in Baba Metzia which I think my attention was drawn to because to me it has echoes of the greatness of Rabbi Groner. And I'll read through the Art Scroll translation. Once when Rabbi Hanina Bar Chama and Rabbi Chia were arguing with each other about some halachic point, Rabbi Hanina said to Rabbi Chia, "With me you argue? Heaven forbid, if Torah were forgotten from the Jewish people, I could restore it through my pilpulim, through my great Talmudic skill. I could restore the Torah to the Jewish people." And Rabbi Chia said back to Rabbi Hanina, "You can argue with me, but this is what I would do to make sure the Torah is not forgotten among the people. I go to a place and I sow flax. Then I weave nets from the flax that has grown. And with those nets, I trap deers. And I take those deers and I shech them and I feed the orphans of the town. And with the parchment, with the skins of the deers, I prepare parchments. And on those parchments, I write the 5 Chumoshim of the Torah. Then I go to the faraway village where there are no teachers. And I teach each of 5 children 1 Chumash. And then I find 6 more children. And I teach each of the children a Seder of the Mishnah. And then I must leave and I tell them, while I am gone, teach each other what I have taught you. And in that way, I will make sure that the Torah is never forgotten in the future." And that, to me, is the most beautiful passage that reflects what Rabbi Groner stood for. It wasn't just his rabbonis, his great halachic leadership. It was the humanity of the man who stepped out of his comfort zone to see to the needs, not just the religious needs, but the ordinary human needs of his flock, and then utilize those needs to bring them the spiritual nourishment that was not available to them. And that's what Rabbi Groner did for my small community, and that's what I think he did for everybody. And with that very beautiful passage, I wanted also to make mention of a couple of other things. Because although Rabbi Groner did go out of his comfort zone to places like Perth, and did surround himself at his Shabbos table with people who needed help, he also did connect at a much higher level, illustrious level, however one might wish to put it. And I wanted to share a reflection also from my father-in-law, whose shiva was only concluded a week ago, the late Joe Berenson or the Sholem, and not to be self-indulgent, but just to show you how far Rabbi Groner's influence reached. My father-in-law was one of the young men in the 1950s, the late 1950s, who brought Rabbi Groner across and continued to bring him across to inspire the community. But he also, in the 1970s, was in the Gough Whitlam's federal cabinet. And in the 1980s, he was the Attorney General and held other portfolios in the state of Western Australia. And he would always tell me two things about Rabbi Groner. He told me that he was a great orator and a superb parliamentary debater, unparalleled. He told me that Rabbi Groner was extraordinary because he defied every single rule of public speaking and was nevertheless the greatest orator he'd ever heard. But he also told me that when he faced issues that were matters of personal conscience, and in federal cabinet and in state cabinet they dealt with issues such as abortion, capital punishment, the decriminalisation of homosexuality, it was to Rabbi Groner that he would turn for guidance. He said there was only one rabbi in Australia that he thought was worth calling for these things, and that was Rabbi Groner. And he said he found Rabbi Groner to be knowledgeable, extraordinarily open-minded and understanding of the position that he was in. He was a very confidential man, my father-in-law, so he did not expand on what Rabbi Groner would have told him. But I do know that he looked to Rabbi Groner for guidance in respect of those issues. There's one particular aspect of that that I wanted to mention, and that is in the 1980s, in all jurisdictions in Australia, the parliaments introduced anti-discrimination law, which has now also come to the fore in terms of its impact on religious institutions. But in the 1980s, the beginning of these anti-discrimination laws began to emerge. At the time, my father-in-law was the Attorney General responsible for the legislation, and I know that he discussed that with Rabbi Groner. And I don't know about the position in Victoria, but in Western Australia he ensured that there was a provision in the Act to protect Jewish day schools, so that Jewish day schools, or the Jewish day school, could discriminate in the sense of being able to enrol only halachically Jewish children. And they did that by inserting a particular provision. I don't want to bore you with a lesson on the law, but there is a particularly interesting aspect of it. In the 1990s, this came to the fore in a case that I was involved in and discussed with Rabbi Groner, when a non-halachically Jewish child was discriminated against at the Jewish Day School in Western Australia because there was a change of policy that permitted non-Jewish children in, but they were not to be enrolled, but there were certain things that were not available to them, such as fee remission, and certain honours within the school, head boy and head girl, and this particular family was offended by that, and with the support of the Reform movement, they sued Carmel School in the Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission. And I was in constant contact with Rabbi Groner about this, and I thought it would be quite fitting not to go through the case, but to just read to you the words of the judge. But I need to explain to you one little thing before I do that and conclude. And that is that the Act, and I think this is still the case in many jurisdictions, does not permit you to discriminate against someone for their religion. So you can't say everyone can be in the cricket team unless you're Muslim or unless you're Christian or unless you're Jewish. But you can say only Jews can be in the cricket team because we think that will enhance the Jewish ethos of the school, provided you do so in good faith to advance your own religious creed. And so the defence of the school was that we were not discriminating against people because they were of any particular ilk, but in order to advance the ethos of the school, which was to provide a Jewish education to halachically Jewish children. And there arose a problem in the case. The problem in the case that I also discussed with Rabbi Groner is this. You're allowed to discriminate in favour of adherents, someone who adheres to the religion. But the clever barrister on the other side put this in cross-examination to our president. If you have a non-halachically Jewish child who keeps all the rules of Judaism, and you have a halachically Jewish child who keeps none, which child is entitled to the benefits reserved for Jewish children? The president said, the child who keeps nothing. And the barrister then submitted to the judge. Who is the adherent, Your Honour? The one who keeps the rules of the religion, or the one who does not? This judgment is now 20 years ago. The judgment was handed down on Erev Yom Kippur. And I wanted to just read to you the sentence that was the critical sentence upon which the judge's decision was made in favour of the school. And it said, the weight of the evidence favours a conclusion that the school has been acting in good faith according to its own view of who is a Jew and what the doctrines of Judaism require of its adherents. The court finds that the term adherents extends to all those regarded as Jews by the school, irrespective of their current level of commitment or observance of prescribed religious forms, because the teachings of the Torah always allow for the possibility of redemption. They are the words of the non-Jewish judge handed down on Erev Yom Kippur 20 years ago. And I wanted to mention that not only because I discussed it with Rabbi Groner, but because that, I think, reflects the man's mission. In his life, in his view, faithful to the mission that he'd been given by the Rabbi, it was always the prospect and the possibility of keeping people connected to their Judaism. And he devoted his life to that cause, for which we are all enormously indebted. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rabbi Solomon, for those beautiful, warm words. I was asked to mention that the Groner family is watching this live stream, so hello from Israel, hello from Yerushalayim, our undivided capital. We're now going to be watching a short video. Rabbi Groner, as we all know, was a great orator, a great chazan, and we're going to be watching a few-minute clip. It's going to take a minute to come on. While the video is getting ready to come on, I want to share a story that I heard from Rabbi Groner quite a few times, and a story that I think would personify the life of Rabbi Groner in terms of his mission and his commitment to the community. Rabbi Groner would recount how the Maggid of Mizrich had a student, Reb Zisha Vanapali. Reb Zisha once came to the Maggid for a loan. It was a market day, and he wanted to have some money that he could go and buy different wares and then sell it at a profit. And he borrowed 10 gold coins from the Maggid, and he went to the market. As he came to the market, a commotion broke out. Someone had come in from a different shtetl, from a different town, and he had borrowed money from a lot of other people, and he had lost the entire sum. And he fainted from the shock that now he and his family would be in debt. And upon reviving this man, they said, "How much did you lose?" And he said, "I lost 10 gold coins." And as soon as he said it, he fainted again. And then quickly they called the doctor, and the doctor said, unless he finds his money, this person's going to die. And Reb Zisha comes and he puts himself forward and he says, "Hello, hello, I found this money." And they count the money, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. but they only count 9 coins. So the people turn around to a physician and say, what a sick man. You found this guy's money, give it all back to him. Why did you keep 1 coin for yourself? And they start beating him up. The Maggid hears the commotion, and he tells him stop, and he calls Reb Zisha into his study. And he says to Reb Zisha, I know that the money that you had just given was the money that I loaned to you only a few minutes ago. And you were willing to go on Mesiras Nefesh and self-sacrifice to give that money away. But what I can't fathom, what I can't understand is, if you were willing to give 90% of it, why didn't you just give the full amount, all of the 10 coins? And the Zisha turned to the Maggid, and he says, Rebbe, was soll ich tun, the mitzvah und euch sein die Gutter? I should do the good deed and also get the credit and be the good one. Everybody said, wow, look at a good guy. I'd rather do the mitzvah and let everybody think I'm just the average guy. Rabbi Groner would tell that story. It was a story that he said kept him going every day. He said, I'd rather do the mitzvah. That's what drives me. We're now going to watch the video and enjoy Rabbi Groner.
Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to Melbourne, Australia. We are down under, and you might think, who knows what's doing about Yiddishkeit down under. But I hope that we will have the opportunity to give you a bird's eye view of the strong Jewish community that we have in Melbourne, and particularly at Chabad Lubavitch in Melbourne, which is one of the biggest institutions in the world.
Rabbi Groner passed away on the 4th day of Tammuz. Let us read what the Rebbe wrote more than 60 years ago for this day. One single classical student who devotes his heart, mind and soul to Torah and to bolstering Torah affects wonders in a large city and in all that city's affairs in a manner that transcends the natural order by merit of our patriarchs, fathers of the world.
He absolutely captivated the young people of the community, and he captivated the older people of the community. And he was something we'd never seen before. He could talk anything. He could talk about the Gemara. He could talk about any Sforim. He could talk about Gedolei Yisrael. And at the same time, which interested us young teenagers, he could talk about sport. No other chassid could talk to us about sport.
I came here to raise funds. Right? Gashmius, material, hat gesagt zu mir, your objective is not only that, verkehrt. I shouldn't say this loud, that's secondary. Your main objective, as Eitan v'Yishchim Rebbe, Zayin, planting Ruchnis, to awaken and to speak to the youth particularly, to the people wherever you go, about their Zaydis and Elta Zaydis and their bodies, that they should remind themselves the way of life of Europe, wherever they come from. That is your objective.
He came to University High School in my matriculation year to speak to the Jewish students. And if you can imagine Rabbi Groner as he was, 6'6", black hat, black beard, black coat, striding, and I mean striding across the oval at lunchtime, with 800 or 900 students shouting at him, "What team do you play for?" I never had any doubt. He played for one team all his life. And that was Am Yisrael, the Jewish people.
All of you, be blessed, seid gesund. Mit unserem Treffen des Simches, in Yeshuas and the Chavis, and let us say, Am Yisrael.
Many times I would, if I had a particular problem or an issue, or I simply needed a blessing, I would call him. Sometimes I would just pop in and knock on the door, and he would be sitting in his room at the front door. and he would welcome me, and we would sit and chat, and I'd walk out of there and feel terribly uplifted and enlightened.
The day I came into Rabbi Groner, and almost when he just opened his mouth, I suddenly saw that what I had been looking for in the world of academia, I found in the world of Rabbi Groner. He allowed that spirit of free inquiry. The syllabus was there, but at the same time, he taught you about life. And it didn't take any time at all to see that from Rabbi Groner. It was like an instantaneous thing.
The Pasuk says, Tavu, taste Torah, taste it. And you will see, Ki Tov Hashem, that Torah is good. It opens your eyes. It gives you different horizons. It gives you a different outlook what Yiddishkeit is.
Simply observing Rabbi Groner's passion and dedication to raising funds for yeshiva in particular, his support for Jewish education in general, and his promotion of Jewish education in the community, that was an example for me.
And I said then to Melbourne Jewry, open your hands. The young bird of the Yeshiva Beth Rivka colleges. If you open your hands with generosity, the bird will grow and soar and reach great heights. And this is what they did. Melbourne Jewry opened their hands, and with the guidance of the Rebbe and of the Anash came here, and local families and everybody, Baruch Hashem, we have institutions which are the Shem Usehila, B'chol Ha'olam Kulai, throughout the world.
I have been attending Rabbi Groner's Gemara Shiur for the last 21 years. We started with a very small group, and it grew, and now we were getting between 20 and 22 ladies. He taught us with all the mefarshim, with everything. At no stage did he think that we are any lesser of knowledge than the people that he taught the night before.
Our sages tell us, Ein beis medrash v'lo chiddush. It doesn't say, you don't need ein beis medrash v'lo chiddush tomorrow. There cannot be a shiur given without something new coming to you.
He was a very big man, but his heart matched his warmth, and his kind-heartedness and his Ahavas Yisrael matched his physique. His door was never closed, and he was always available for everybody, for broken hearts and for people with their problems, always available, and he actually felt their sorrow and he was happy for their joy.
Bilam Harasha of this week's Advent, who blesses the Jewish people, says as follows. Korah, there will be a time, unfortunately, when the Jewish people will be crouched. I'm not going into history. They will be persecuted. Shochav, they will be lying down. And God forbid, people will think, oh, you'll see you, that's the end. Nevertheless, no. They get up strong as lions and as a lioness, and they rebuild.
I also want to say about watching him get old the last few years, the physical deterioration we just felt for him, how he still managed to get up there every week and still give the share and still be prepared, even in the pain and no sleep.
More than anything else, Rabbi Groner valued and cherished the great zchus, the merit that he had to be the Rebbe's emissary to Melbourne. The Rebbe had a vision for Melbourne. He drew up the plans, and he appointed Rabbi Groner as his builder.
What takes a good Jewish young man like you at the time, a young man, you're a young man still, but at that time, coming from Eastern Parkway,
Why to Australia? The Rebbe sent you, but I mean, you know, you yourself, how did you bring yourself to do this? Being a shaliach, an emissary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you don't ask questions. The soldier doesn't ask questions from the general. He does as he is told, because we believe that the general knows what is good for this soldier. The Rebbe always said that when he sends out people, it's not only to help the other people that are there, it's to help the individual emissary to reach a fulfillment and a certain sense of accomplishment, which that is the purpose of his creation of coming down to this world. I have no regrets, my friend. No regrets whatsoever that I'm in Australia. That is what we were imbued by the Friedrich Rebbe, who I had the source to know when he came from the ship broken on a wheelchair. And he came and he said, he'll make America a mocking Torah. A person who went against the Bolsheviks. A person who was standing at the firing squad to be shot. And he did not fret, and he came to America. And this Rebbe sent out shluchim. He imbued in us that will, that desire, that ois, that boyas, that we go wherever he sends us. And we know that we will be blessed by his blessings and we will succeed.
I help you. Oh. But one in Australia is nicht kein Spanisch Judentum, the liquid civil affair.
This is called Down Under. Everyone who comes here is surprised. They didn't visualize that in Melbourne there's one of the strongest Jewish communities in the world. Where's the applause?
Even at the last moments, the last few days of his life, when I went to see him about communal issues, he would always remind me that there are certain people that I should go and visit to see how they are. I mean, that's Rabbi Groner. Even while he was lying in his sick bed, labouring to speak, his concern was this lady contacted to see how she's feeling, have you rung this person, and so on. I think this is something that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life.
Who knows the song, We Want Mashiach? All right, let's all sing. Yeah, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait.
And let us hope and pray that the words of the prophet that we will say this Shabbos in the Haftarah, V'olu Moishim Behar Tzion, Lishpeitis Hareisav, V'hoisol Anishem Amelucha, that the coming of the Mashiach will come and bring peace and tranquility, as the words of the prophet Isaiah in chapter 2, that no blood will be shed. People will understand each other and tolerate each other. So the Rabbi Shalom should help that take it from Miyad. Mashiach should come. And you know what? Am Yisrael Chai.
Asked just to give a few thank yous in the closing remarks. First, we want to thank Lady Stern for his photography, Lady Picnic for all his help in setting this place up, to all the dear Groner grandchildren for putting this together, and to each and every one of you for coming here tonight. Give yourself a clap. Where's the clap? Just in conclusion, Marcus mentioned a Gemara. I want to mention a Gemara too that Rabbi Groner was mentioned many times. at a dinner for his 80th birthday, which a lot of you would have been at, Rabbi Groner mentioned a Gemara about how when the Nasi, Rabbi Gamliel, wanted appointed 2 students to be the head of the yeshiva, they refused to come. They refused to come because they thought that he was being offered a position of leadership, of stature. And the humility didn't allow them to come. And so he summoned them a second time. And when he called them, he said, do you really think that leadership I'm giving you? I'll never forget Rabbi Groner screaming, servitude I'm giving you. The leadership wasn't a position of power, of a place where an ego could be expressed, but rather it was a servitude. Rabbi Groner concluded and he said, I am here to serve, and I look forward to continuing to serve for many more years. And then he made a call to all to join him. And tonight, as we conclude this evening and we commemorate the life and the legacy of Rabbi Groner, it is only appropriate for each and every one of us to leave here tonight in joining in that continuation of the building of this community. Be it, as Rabbi Groner asked then in that speech, for all to take on another share. Be it for Achnasas Orchim, to welcome others into your home. Today is only as strong and is only as powerful and is only as impactful as we are willing to make it. And so we ask each and every one of you as you leave here tonight to, for 1 minute, think about something that you want to take on. Something that is meaningful, relevant, real to you. And try to keep the spirit, the legacy of Rabbi and Rebbetzin Groner, who both stood for Torah, for Chesed, for davening, and built such a beautiful community. As Rabbi Groner would proudly say, I've just got to say this by the way, I remember on Shavuos when we give out the ice cream, he would always want to know how many kids, and I would say 400. Did you hear? It was 1,000 kids. Rabbi Groner, there's 1,000 people here tonight for you who have committed to taking on numerous, countless mitzvahs. The Yuneshama shall have an aliyah, and he should be a good better for ganz Klal Yisrael, and specifically for the community in Melbourne that you loved so dearly. Thank you all. Rabbi Minyamarv now over here.
Brian Wiener came to watch Thursday night.
Why not? You need to share. Why not?